John Leonard Scott. John travelled under two names, John Scott and Leonard Scott. He was an instructor at the Aero Club, joining in 1936. The Aero Club was short of instructors, and so he was dispatched first of all to Walloona with Ken Steele, who eventually became the CFI of the Aero Club. Today we have Bill Steele with us. Put your hand up, Bill. And so it was Bill's dad and John Scott who opened up the Walloona Training Centre for the Royal Aero Club. John Scott, after that, went to Kalgoorlie and was in charge up there, and then went to other country centres. Of course, in those days, the gold mines were producing a lot of gold, and there was a lot of money around, and people were flying aeroplanes, and a lot of them didn't have a lot to do in their spare time. John Scott was lucky enough to have a camera and took quite a few photographs of the aircraft at the Royal Aero Club and at various centres where he worked. And I think these are pretty rare photographs, and I was pretty happy to come across them. But here we have the old Airways hangar, Airways smaller hangar, Royal Aero Club and their hangar, and in the back these other hangars. That was generally known as Simpson's hangar, and the state of the aerodrome wasn't too good in those days. Here's another one, maybe a more familiar view of the buildings on the aerodrome. Once again, the Australian National Airways, or WA Airways hangar, Airways itself, Royal Aero Club building and the Royal Aero Club hangar, and there's the Simpsons hangar in the background. Another shot of the airfield from the north looking towards Vic Park, Belmont area sort of thing. Another one of the buildings at the aerodrome. Club members in front of the Gypsy Moth in the mid-1930s. Australian National Airways had arrived, so probably after 1936. Some workers in the hangar repairing some of the aircraft. And UKY was blown over in a willy-willy at Meekatharra on the 29th of September 1937. That's it, on its back. And that's it being towed into Meekatharra for repair. UAO, pretty famous tiger moth from the club, bogged at Maylands, being towed out by a Ford, by the look of it. The surface wasn't too good in those days. And that's a rainy day in the winter of 1937. Some club members. Reg, maybe that's one of the jackets you've got. Some members in front of UJH. That aircraft used to be owned by Viv James, if you're studying history of aviation in WA. The names associated with these people are probably around and back to front and misplaced. However, Les Wolfe, if we could find out which one of those two he is, was the first person, as far as I know, to obtain a private licence in Western Australia. He gained it through the Perth Flying School in 1927, when Norman Brealey was running the show. So he was a very active member of the Royal Aero Club. I don't know whether it's him or him. As I said, the names associated with these photos tend to be all over the place. Les Wolfe is supposed to be in this photograph, but there's no one bearing a likeness to the previous image. There's the first tiger moth, 1938. And here are some of the members from Walloona, and as I said, Ken Steele and John Scott opened up the Walloona training for the Royal Aero Club. Even if the names aren't in the right order down here, at least we've got some idea of who was there at the time. That's the hornet moth, which came to grief in Pinduli, I think it was, a year or so later. And there it is again with some members in front of it. All these photos taken by John Scott. I don't know where they've been in the intervening years, but I came across them recently. Some more members with the hornet moth, and that is supposedly John Scott himself standing in front of a pair of gypsy moths in Walloona. Now, I knew Bob Giles very well, and I'm pretty sure that's not a photo of Bob Giles. ABM, in a roundabout way, stands for Merv Bay. And maybe it's Merv Bay, I don't know. Does anyone know, did anyone know Merv Bay? No hands up? No. That's UKY, came to grief taking off at Rottnest. That's it while it was waiting to be transported back to the mainland. Very few photographs of the moth miners in the early days of the Aero Club, and so that's a pretty good shot. There it is again, the moth miner. John Scott was a fairly popular instructor at the Aero Club, and when the war arrived, he enlisted in March 1940, promoted to flying officer in 1940, flight lieutenant in 1941, squadron leader in 1943, and posted missing on an operational flight on the 27th of March 1944. John and his crew reached Loeang Island where they were cared for by the locals. He had taken off from Hughes Airfield, and this was the area which he was patrolling when he was shot down. John Scott's crew consisted of these people, and that explains